Hello, countrymen and women, comrades and friends. Welcome again to one of my episodes about remembering KK. As you know, we've lost our founding father of the nation, Comrade President Kaunda, and we are within the mourning period, which was stipulated 21 days of national mourning. So, my name is Mainda Simataa, aspiring as a candidate, as a councillor here in Kamala Ward 5, a politician, a student of economics and history. So I thought I should share with you a few things that you did not know about KK, because the man's history, 97 years old, he died at 97 years old. It's a very rich history, and I think it's only fair that those of us who have met him in person, who have talked with him in person, should share the little that we know, so that we can continue to remember and get inspired by the life that he lived. Number one, did you know that KK was almost killed as a baby when he was about 4 years? Yes, KK could have been killed as a baby. He was almost eaten by a lion within the Chinsali district, those olden days. And it was not uncommon for people to be eaten by lions, because by then Zambia was not as populated as it is. I think by that time there were only about 4 million of people or so in then northern Rhodesia. So yes, KK could have been killed. A lion could have robbed Zambia of one of its greatest presidents, one of its greatest statesmen. So KK survived an attack by a lion when he was 4 years old. And that is thanks to one of his elder brothers. I've just forgotten his name. And KK narrates in one of his books that he knew nothing about that incident, and he can't even remember that incident. But he was told that he was almost eaten by a lion, and he took one of his brothers, who rushed out of the house or the hut, whatever it was, when the lion was approaching, and it almost grabbed KK, but the brave brother, and he was a boy by then as well, rushed out and dragged KK by, I don't know if it's the legs or the hands, but they just managed to escape from that marauding lion, which almost claimed the life of a man or a baby that would later become president of Zambia, a founding father and liberator in 1964. But KK did not just survive the attack by a lion once. He survived an attack by a lion 2 times. The second time was when he was fighting together with his comrades for the independence of Zambia. KK told me a story that on one of his journeys of campaigning and mobilizing, he used to ride a bicycle, and he used to ride long distances. Sometimes he would ride through parks and paths that were infested by lions. So on one of these days, sometime in the 1950s, he came across a lion as he was riding to go for a meeting, and he stopped before he approached the lion. So the lion was just seated in his pathway. It was relaxing, and KK stopped as well. There was a good distance between them, but they had seen each other. So he says that he stood there for a good number of minutes, and the lion never moved. He also never moved. So he said at that moment he gathered enough courage and lifted up his bicycle, started banging his bicycle, making noise, and somehow that unsettled the lion, and the lion just went away from him, just with the noise that he was making with the bicycle. He joked about it and said he was too much for the king of the jungle, and the king of the jungle, the lion, of course, made way for him, and that's how he survived his second and last attack by a lion. So KK is a survivor, and I think from that time, that also contributed to his courage in his growth in his political life. So that's thing number one. KK could have been eaten by a lion, not once, but twice, as a baby of 4 years, as well as an adult during the campaigns for independence. Number two, did you know that KK was an athlete? A track athlete, or a runner, a marathon runner. Did you know that? All of us know to say KK was fond of football. He was a darling of the Zambia national team. He was even nicknamed KK. The team was nicknamed KK11. Whenever there was a football match of significance, he would always attend that football match and support the Chipolo Polo. There are all those pictures of him juggling the ball. KK was a football enthusiast. But did you know that before he became a football enthusiast, he was a runner, he was a track athlete? A competition at Munali Secondary School. It was a very, I don't know how many laps, I think it was about 10 laps that they were contesting in. And he tells to say that he was very, very pathetic at athletes. I mean, at athletics. He came out last in that race. And that's a story that he personally told me on one of the occasions that I visited him. And he told to say that he learned a lesson from coming out number last. And he said he could have given up the moment all his competitors in that race finished. And he says that he was the only one who was track. And part of him told me to say he could stop running and save himself the embarrassment and the humiliation of being a loser. But he kept on running and running and running until he finished that lap. And he came out number last. And that forged a sense of commitment in him, a sense of courage, a sense of perseverance, a sense of never giving up. So he told me that story personally to say it was not just about athletics for him or running or participating to finish the race, but it was a matter of discipline. He always said, if you start something, you have to commit to it and you have to finish it. That is thing number 2 about KK. KK was an athlete before he became a football enthusiast. And I think he became more of a football enthusiast because I think he knew within him he didn't have the proper skills to become a track athlete like the Samuel Matetes of this world. So that's a bit of history on KK. Number 2, that is KK was an athlete. Number 3, did you know that KK was a vegetarian? Of course, most of us know that KK was a vegetarian, but do we know why KK was a vegetarian? Why he didn't eat meat? Okay? And the story behind it, you may not have heard it, but it's not because KK wanted to live long. He didn't just become a vegetarian because he wanted to live to 100 years, and he died at 97, so he was just 3 years short of being 100 years. KK was a vegetarian. And the story that he told me of why he became a vegetarian was that there was one time during the struggle for independence in the 1950s, he went to a certain village, and the poverty that he found in that village really touched him. And he said the people there were so poor that none of them had ever tasted meat. That's what he said. He visited a village, it should have been somewhere in northern province in that day. He said the people there were so poor that they had never tasted meat. So that really touched him. And the second time that had an impression on him or caused him to become a vegetarian was that there was a time he was in town. He wanted to buy meat in a certain butchery, but he was told to line up and buy that meat through the window. So he protested against it. He thought it was very humiliating for him to be told to line up outside in his own country to buy meat through a window. So he said those 2 incidences of being forced to buy meat through a window and of visiting villages where some people had lived all their lives and never tasted meat, it had an impression on him. And he decided to and vowed to himself that he would never eat meat until every Zambian could afford to buy meat. Look at the time we are living in. How much is a kilo of meat? Right now, how many people can afford meat? I don't eat meat regularly, and I can't afford it regularly. And I know the majority of Zambians out there cannot afford meat regularly. KK was a man who lived his principles, and he told himself he would never eat meat until every Zambian could afford to eat meat. For over 8 years, he never tasted meat because he committed to that vow. He wanted to ensure to say that every Zambian was well off and well taken care of, so that every Zambian could eat meat. That's the only time that KK could have eaten meat. So it wasn't about living long. It was about fighting or making a statement for justice, for good nutrition for everyone. That was KK on being a vegetarian. That was number 3. Number 4, did you know that KK was a musician? KK was a musician, a composer, a singer, and his favorite instrument was a guitar. Of course, you know and you've heard, and some of you have been playing that song, Tiende Pamozi. But that's not the only song that KK composed. He composed many other songs. And he said that music was not just about entertainment. For him, music was a way to preach a message. He said you could reach, there are ways you could reach people through music and not just through politicking, standing on the pulpit and hammering away at politics. He said that music had a potent way of influencing people, moving them emotionally, and making them listen to a message which without music perhaps they couldn't have listened to. So he was a composer, and he composed many songs, and the most popular, of course, is Tiende Pamozi Ndimtima Umo. So KK was a musician throughout his life, and his favorite audience was his wife, Betty Kaunda, late Betty Kaunda, may her soul rest in peace. His favorite audience was Betty Kaunda. He would sing love songs for Betty Kaunda, and sometimes he would sing also to his family, his very young family at that time, whenever he could afford to. KK was a man who was always on the move and had little time to be with his family, but whenever he was with family, he would sing with them. KK was a musician. He used music to reach out to people in politics. Look at the way music is being used today. It's the total opposite of what KK intended. Today, musicians who are singing for the PF have no morality whatsoever. And I don't subscribe to this thing of saying, no, it's just business. It's never about business. There must be morality. There must be a thin line of ethics in whatever we do. If we are going to do anything, if we are going to do businesses that poison people, grow food that poisons people and call it business, make music that influences people to vote the wrong way and call it business, then we're not being human. We are being a danger to society. So that was number 4. KK was a musician. He died a musician, and maybe one of these days we'll have his guitar being played, perhaps put in the museum for all of us to see and to remind us of his history as a musician. Number 5. KK was a philosopher. Okay, as a matter of fact, when KK died, I think Shua did write, Nick Cheeseman did write a very good article. They published it in the Mail and Guardian in the UK, and it was titled KK, the Last Philosopher King. That was the title of the article, which Dr. Shua, a lecturer at UNZA, as well as Nick Cheeseman, professor of politics in the UK, wrote. They called KK, they titled the KK, they titled the article KK, the Last of the Philosopher Kings. So the philosopher king concept is a Greek concept where the Greeks believed that a man who would lead people, or a leader of a nation, or a tribe, or any other organized form of society had to be a philosopher king. That means that person had to be a thinker, but also had to be an action-oriented person. That is the philosopher king. So we all know that philosophers are good readers. At least that's the lay understanding of what a philosopher is. A philosopher is somebody who reads a lot of books and has got great ideas and really thinks deep and thinks about situations, thinks about the world, thinks about how to change the world, how to improve things for human beings. You can be a philosopher in science, you can be a philosopher in art, you can be a philosopher in culture, you can be a philosopher in politics. KK was a philosopher in his own right, and his specialty was politics, economics, and changing society. He gifted me 2 books at the time I met him. One of them is this book, Letter to My Children. Okay, he wrote that book, Letter to My Children. This was a gift to me when I visited him. It was signed by him. There is also another book that he wrote, Humanism in Zambia. KK's idea of ideology was humanism, and basically the concept of humanism was very simple. KK said that everything that a government does must ensure to say that it helps people to live better lives. So the essence of government is to empower people and to protect people. And he says everything that society does or government does must put a human being at the center. It must put the needs of the human being first. That's what humanism was all about. And KK, to that extent, was a philosopher, and he wrote many books. I think there are over 10 books that he wrote. I only have 2 of those. One of them is Humanism, and the other one is Letter to My Children. The other one is a very nice book which I would recommend to you, is The High Cost of Principles. KK wrote this book during the 70s when he hosted many revolutionary movements and independence movements from the borderline states such as Angola, Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, and South Africa. He hosted them here in Zambia when they were fighting for their independence. So he was a person who wasn't just boxed in to be a local leader in Zambia and forget about others. He was a Pan-Africanist. He looked beyond borders. He was an internationalist. So KK was a thinker. KK was a writer. KK was a philosopher. He was a philosopher king. He was a president. He was a president that you could be proud of. If you've watched some of his videos, you could really see the immense understanding of local and international and Pan-African affairs. You could see the massive understanding of the world which he lived in. And really, he was a marvel when he was on the podium. His clarity of thought, his systematic approach to issues, and his oratory on the platform is a sight to behold. So KK was a philosopher thing. I mean, a philosopher king and a president to be proud of. He was a reader and he was a doer. That was number 5. Number 6. Did you know that KK was a teacher? Yes, KK began his life or his educational life as a teacher, or rather his career as a teacher. KK was a teacher. He taught in Mufrila, my hometown, for a good number of years. And he told me a story whereby he said when he began to teach, he was so bored as a teacher, and he was assigned to a library. That's where he began, a school library, and I just forgotten the school where he was as a teacher. But he was assigned to a library, and he felt so bored. He felt underutilized, and I think it was during the time when he used to work as a teacher in the library that he read a lot of books and began to develop these ideas and concepts about revolution, about independence, about ending colonialism. So through the boredom and through teaching, KK slowly began to become politicized. So respect to KK, respect to all the teachers out there. The teachers, I think, the teachers, they say teachers are the educators of all the educated. So KK has a background in teaching, and if you're a teacher, you've got something really to be proud of. So KK began his life as a teacher. He never really taught long. Soon he branched off and began to fight for political independence for Zambia, political and economic independence for Zambia. So some of you teachers who are politically minded, there's nothing wrong with that. Some of you must gather the courage to join us in politics and contribute to the economic independence of Zambia. So that was number 6. KK began his life as a teacher and taught in Mufrila, which is my hometown, one of the schools there. Number 7. Did you know that KK was a Salaula trader? Yes. Upon failing, he considered his teaching career a failure because he said he never succeeded as a teacher. He was an innate politician. He didn't really do well in being a teacher. He considered himself a failure. But he also tried out trading. He tried business. He tried selling salaula, and he told stories of days during the weekends when he wasn't teaching. He would go off to Mukambo border post. That's a border between Congo and Zambia in Mufrila. That border is in Mufrila, Mukambo. He would go off to the border, order some salaula, and resell that salaula just to make ends meet. It was never easy for him, even as a teacher. The amount that he was getting was hard enough to sustain him as an individual, or even sustain the children that he had. By then he had a young family. So that was KK. He was a salaula trader. So big up to all you salaula traders. Never feel undermined or underestimated, or feel that being a salaula trader, a seller, is not something in life. Because even the vice president of the Republic of Zambia, Kenneth Kaunda, once tried his art at salaula, but of course he wasn't successful in salaula. His performance in being a salaula trader was dismal. It was as unsuccessful as his attempt was at trying teaching. And by the way, KK also taught in Zimbabwe. He after failing to make a success of his career as a teacher in Zambia, he moved over to Zimbabwe, and I think he also moved over to Tanzania, tried to teach there, but nothing worked out. But it was in Zimbabwe that he cut his political teeth, because he made some people some Zambians who were also trying to ply their trade in Zimbabwe. Then by then it was Southern Rhodesia. They tried to ply their trade at teaching. It didn't work out for them, so they came back frustrated. They came back as radicals who wanted to change this country and be able to make a life or a living in the country that was of their birth. Point number 8. Did you know that KK has died with some secrets? And when I say has died some secrets, I literally mean it, because there are certain minerals in Zambia that are there, and you and me don't even know where those things are. But KK knows where those things are, and I didn't push him to tell me where those minerals are, but he did tell me that there is diamond in Zambia. Actually, the location should be Kafue, somewhere in the Kafue gorges. There are diamonds in Zambia, so don't be cheated. There are diamonds in Zambia. KK told me that. There is also oil in Zambia. And I think sometimes as Zambians, we forget that we have oil. Oil is there, and this is something that has been reported in the news. There is a company that's exploring, that was given an exploration license by the Zambian government. I think it was in 2019. Talo Oil, or it's a British company, a British oil exploration company. They were given a license to explore oil. I don't know how far they have gone. I don't know if they have already explored and they're already drilling and exporting our oil. I don't know. But the fact is that oil exists. In 2019, I think they were given a license to explore oil somewhere in northern province. But KK knew that way back, and Zambia could have started producing oil during the time of KK. But the problem is that KK's political leanings were opposed to British interests. KK was outspoken about Pan-Africanism. KK was very outspoken about apartheid, and KK was very outspoken about colonialism. So for that reason, the British did not like him, and they decided to punish him by stopping the oil exploration project, because they knew to say if KK has oil and he has copper, combine those two, which himself KK said that he was going to have real power to make a difference in people's lives. The British knew to say that he was going to help Zimbabwe, Namibia, and all the other states that were fighting for their independence. He was going to help them with a lot of money to get their independence quickly. So they shut down the oil project, and that was the end of it. So there are minerals in Zambia here that could help our country develop. It's only that much of this is kept a secret from us, the ordinary people. But KK himself did tell me to say there are diamonds in Zambia, there's gold in Zambia, there is all sorts of minerals. You know the rest, the emeralds, the cobalt, the copper, and all that. But top among them, diamonds and oil. Those things exist in Zambia. Number 9. Did you know that KK was actually an international activist? He wasn't just Zambian president, no. He was an international and Pan-Africanist activist. Now, when we talk about Pan-Africanism, people get confused and ask, what is this Pan-Africanism? It sounds just like ideas for old people and leaders of the past. But the idea behind Pan-Africanism is that without African countries uniting, Africa will never go anywhere. Africa will never develop. The poverty that we see, the wars that we see, the violence that we see, the disease and the illiteracy, the pathetic living conditions and the pathetic lives of Africans will never improve as long as Africa considers itself to be separate states. Look at the United States. It's even in the name of the country, United States of America. That's one country. America is one country. Africa must be one country. What we should have is states in this continent that we call Africa. If the United Kingdom can be a combination of Wales, England, Northern Ireland, and Scotland to form one country, why can't Africa be a country? If the United States can be a combination of states such as Georgia, Atlanta, Florida, New York, Texas, all those states with different laws. By the way, they've got because this statehood is about having a territory, a unique territory, having the power to make laws and having the power to collect taxes. That's what makes a state, and having an enforcement institution. So if you have an enforcement institution like police and the military, you have the power to collect taxes, you have the power to make laws. You are a state, and that's what that United States is. So even Africa should become the United States of Africa, and that was KK's idea. That was Nkrumah's idea. That was the idea of many of the founding fathers of African countries, the countries that we call countries here, Zambia. You know, these are just small pockets of states that should have united to form one country so that Africa could become a superpower. But I'm afraid at the moment, without the unity of Africa, without us pursuing Pan-Africanism as a young generation, we are getting nowhere in the struggle to ensure to say that Africa has its right place under the sun, where other continents and other races can respect us as human beings. Without us uniting as a continent to have one currency, to have one passport, to have one common market and one economy, to have one army, we'll always be beaten and we'll always be lagging behind in development. So KK was an internationalist, KK was a Pan-Africanist, and that's not something that you hear very much from the leaders of today, the presidents that we have, because they are more interested in looting and stealing from the resources of this country rather than making the resources work for us as the people of this continent. So Africa should be a country. That's why I love the saying, or rather the blog or the articles that come out frequently from one of my friends, Professor Griff Chirwa. He writes and contributes to a column called Africa is a Country. Let's put it in our mind that Africa is a country. Julius Malema talks about Africa being a country. Let's think of Africa as a country and not as a continent with different states that are too weak to defend themselves. That was number 9, KK being an internationalist and being a Pan-Africanist. Number 10, finally, number 10. Did you know that KK only had one wife? Yes, KK only had one wife all his life. 97 years, politician, top of his career, top of his generation. With all the success that he had, it would have been easy for him to lose discipline. And I don't say this with disrespect, but if you take a look at many eminent persons in society, let's look about the other presidents. Chiluba, how many wives did he have? Mwanawasa, how many wives did he have? You can check the record. KK is the only man or the only president of all the presidents that has managed to stick to one wife. Discipline is important in leadership. That's the lesson behind it. It's not about who can manage to just have one wife, but discipline. Discipline is important in leadership. How many young people nowadays can stay disciplined and commit to have one wife? So that was just a bonus point. Number 10, KK only had one wife, and actually didn't even refer to Betty Kaunda as his wife. He says, he used to say my girlfriend for many years. When they had their 60th anniversary, KK would say, I am proud of my girlfriend of 60 years, of 70 years. They were married for a very long time. So big up to KK for staying loyal to one woman for all his life. I think that is a measure of discipline that we must emulate. So those are the 10 things, the 10 golden nuggets that I wanted to share with you about KK as we remember him, as he has departed this world to go and be with the ancestors. Let's stick to the values that he has taught us. Let's try to emulate him as much as possible. And if we really love KK, let us do as the Bible says when it referred to Christ. When Christ says, those that love me will do as I command. So those of us that love KK, let us continue the struggle from where he left. Let us struggle for the reinstatement of free education, for the reinstatement of free and quality healthcare. Look at the COVID situation right now. People literally are queuing in chemists, private chemists, to buy medicine because there are no medicines in hospitals. That was never KK's idea. KK's idea was a public health institution must be established where each and every Zambian, no matter whether they are wealthy or poor, they will have access to quality healthcare so that nobody needs to die because they have no money in their pockets. Free education. The son of a farmer, the son of a doctor, the son of a maid, the son of a taxi driver must have an equal and equitable access to education. Those are the ideas that we must fight for at the local level. Let's fight to ensure to say that the Zambian industries and the resources work for the benefit of the people of Zambia. My name is Mainda Simataa, and you can find more of these videos on my YouTube channel. Just search for Mainda Simataa, subscribe, and ring the bell for more of these videos. Thank you very, very much for listening, and let us continue the struggle that our forefather KK started. A luta continua, Vittoria Aseta. The struggle continues, and victory is certain.